Recording in progress.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to the second installment of the series Sanvă, an initiative by the Rotaract District Steering Committee of the RI District 3220, hosted by the Rotaract Clubs of Faculty of Medicine, University of Colombo, Martale, National School of Business Management, and Royal Institute of Colombo, to educate the public regarding the COVID-19 pandemic that has shaken the entire world. I am Rotaract Sanvă from the Rotaract Club of Faculty of Medicine, University of Colombo, and I will be your host this evening. So today we have with us here Professor Neelika Malavige, a professor and the head of Department of Immunology and Molecular Medicine, Faculty of Medical Sciences at the University of Sri Jayawardena. She has contributed immensely to the Sri Lankan healthcare sector with her research work in the field of infectious diseases, and has played a vital role in our country's response to the COVID-19 outbreak. We are extremely honored to have you here with us today. Welcome, madam. Today's session of Sanvă is centered around the COVID-19 pandemic and its impact on the healthcare sector. So to start things off, madam, now this coronavirus outbreak has undoubtedly managed to affect all of us, including various industries and people, the healthcare sector being the one who got the biggest blow. Could you please briefly explain exactly how the pandemic affected the healthcare sector?
Yes, so just to confirm, I think all of everybody is listening are fairly young individuals, I think, right, in their 20s or something like that. So it's nice to speak to a very young crowd. And I know we are going through extremely challenging times, and the healthcare sector is stretched to their limits. And so we are seeing how much the healthcare sector can be stretched before it breaks. So it's like an experiment to see, okay, how much does the elastic stretch before it breaks? So we can say that the healthcare sector is stretched to the breaking point because of several reasons. One thing, of course, you could talk about the physical tiredness feeling you get caring for such patients over and over again. In those clothes, wearing those clothes is not easy, and to be in those conditions, tight-fitting mask and all those clothes is physically challenging. But I think more than the physically challenging part, what is the most difficult part is how the healthcare workers are mentally stressed with this. And the mental stress has got more and more over time in a different manner. So when we actually started with last year, the mental stress was mostly because of stigma. I mean, if you remember, some of the healthcare workers who were working at IDH were not allowed to come home. The neighbors would be rejecting them. If they went to shops to buy something, they were not allowed to. Stress has got, and more healthcare workers who were in hostels caring for patients or boarding houses, they were asked to leave. So that was the stigma at the beginning of the epidemic. Now, of course, because everybody has COVID, unfortunately, you see, so it is like everybody is used to COVID, but now it's a completely different picture. We know how much it has spread everywhere, and all resources are limited. I mean, it can be US, it can be Sri Lanka, it can be Pakistan. You see, so every country has its limits. So even developed countries, like the very developed countries like US, had limits. I mean, in New York Park, there were tents treating patients. Okay, so they didn't have door patients, but they had tents in Central Park where people have, so that's how makeshift hospitals were set up everywhere in the world, and caring for patients. So here in Sri Lanka also, we have been stretched to the limits. I mean, in Sri Lankan hospitals, anyway, if anybody's visited a Sri Lankan hospital, a government hospital, you would know that there are anyway flow patients. But right now, in private sector, Sri Lankan government hospitals, it's just, beyond the capacity. And to actually see so many people dying, that's a great stress, because usually when you try hard and you work hard and somebody recovers and goes home, then you think that you've achieved something good, right? I mean, you cared for a patient, the patient survived and went home. You cared for a patient and the patient died, or the patient died and you couldn't do anything about it. That is very, very challenging.
Yes, madam. I can. That was very enlightening, especially because we don't really think about the mental stress that the healthcare workers go through. We think of the physical stress that they put on themselves. And like you said, madam, the healthcare systems were definitely put under immense pressures and stretched beyond their capacity. Like your point, especially sectors such as the maternal and healthcare clinics. So they couldn't be conducted in a regular basis. All of these regular checkups have to be halted. What other systems were affected other than the maternal healthcare sector?
So maternal child healthcare are obviously very important, and this is not something that just happened in Sri Lanka. So in countries like Africa, a lot of kids didn't get their childhood immunizations because routine things were closed. So whereas in Sri Lanka, somehow the childhood immunizations were done routinely. I mean, none of the childhood immunizations were missed. So that is something good. But coming to other things, like we have a lot of diabetic clinic, cardiology clinics, and our population has a very high proportion of individuals with non-communicable diseases, especially in the Western province. I mean, so many people with diabetes, ischemic heart disease, hypertension, and these patients, we know that these drugs are sent sometimes home, but then you don't see the patient. And so there's a large proportion of patients who might also die because of lack of care. And especially during the second wave, which happened from October and it went down sort of in February, which happened in the CMC, and there were area lockdowns in certain these flats, like these Uyan flats and Batu. So those were closed and people could not move in and out. So there were a large proportion of people who actually, I mean, some people died because they couldn't access medicine. So that's why then the clinics were moved into those areas, voluntary clinics. So it has not just affected maternal childcare, but especially non-communicable diseases and even things like routine surgeries. Yeah.
Thank you, madam. Next, I want to discuss a little bit about the resources problem. So like you said, not just Sri Lanka, other countries also had to go through this. How has it specifically affected Sri Lanka and what resources in particular?
Yeah, so if you take rich countries, okay, so let's talk about treatment available for COVID. So a lot of people think that there is no treatment for COVID, but of course there is very specific treatment for COVID. That's why when you go into hospital at the right time, people are saved. So, and there are drugs that you give for patients who develop pneumonia. Then there are drugs you give anybody who develops severe disease to prevent their blood getting thicker, because when their blood gets thicker, it starts clotting. So you have drugs to prevent that. So there are very specific drugs, and even things like oxygen. Now, we saw the really unfortunate incidences in India where they ran out of oxygen. And I think that is the saddest way for somebody to die. Okay, because when you run out of oxygen, and it is not just India, other countries like Nepal and Indonesia also face the same situation. Nepal also, although because the population-wise, Nepal is smaller than India, so the proportion, the numbers of people who actually died are less. So Nepal faced it, Indonesia faced it, and we know it is in Sri Lanka also. We have hit the ceiling. We are now administering the maximum capacity of oxygen we have, and this is why we have imported oxygen from India, and it is on the way. So we do have issues with oxygen as well. I mean, this is why we're importing it, because we have to reach the saturation point. So that is about, and also certain drugs like tocilizumab, that is a drug that you give for pneumonia, which we have also run out. So we have run out of certain drugs. But apart from the treatment for COVID, the main inequality that we are seeing is vaccines, isn't it? I mean, all the rich countries, so that is also part of the healthcare. I mean, one thing is curative aspect, the other aspect is the preventive aspect. So when we talk about the preventive aspect, vaccines are the mainstay in intervention. We know that the UK is having a massive number of cases right now, much more cases than they had during the height of the epidemic, their second wave from November to January. There are more than 1,000, like about 2,000 people, 1,500, 2,000 people died every day in the UK. But now they're having more cases than that, but very few deaths. Okay, why is that? Because they have vaccinated the elderly. I mean, basically, almost all the adults, except for like a small proportion. So vaccines are the way forward. So yes, they're having cases, but it is not severe. Okay, so if it is not severe, we won't be worrying about COVID. If China had, if there was some infection causing a common cold and a little bit of fever, if some virus emerged like that in China, nobody would pay attention. We are paying attention to it because you need to go into hospital, you get pneumonia, and then you die. Okay, and in Sri Lanka, of course, the vaccination program has started. I mean, it's going in a fantastic way, but it was, I mean, we were way lagging behind developed countries, nothing but because we left funds. Okay, because all the other countries, the Western countries, paid upfront last August 2020, when the phase 3 clinical trials started. So with the clinical trials, all these countries bought AstraZeneca, Pfizer, Moderna, all three vaccines for their population. You see, so so they got the vaccines first, and now they're talking about administering a third dose. That they're talking about it. Then so many countries in Africa and in Asia have got very poor coverage of vaccines, and that is not a socialistic point of view, because vaccines actually prevent development of these variants and reduction in transmission. So unless we do that, you will see new variants emerging from here and there, and that will be a threat to the whole world. Okay, so this is how inequality works.
Yes, madam. And you talked a little bit about the actual treatment of COVID. If they nowadays we see that they send people to self-isolation. Even if they are COVID positive, they send people to their homes if the symptoms are not that severe. So people who are self-isolating and quarantining themselves who are COVID positive, what are the measures that they can take?
Yes, so that's a very important question. Now, although we only started it now, many other countries, the majority of countries, I would say, were doing that since the beginning of the pandemic. And that is because most of the people who get COVID don't develop complications, especially the younger ones. Okay, so in that case, you don't need to get them into hospital and clog the hospital systems, make them there, stay in hospital or whatever isolation facility for 14 days. And in Sri Lanka, we know how that caused a lot of social issues as well. People suddenly being taken away and being isolated, and then people not coming forward for testing as a result of that. So isolating healthy people with COVID symptoms is fine, because I mean, what are the COVID symptoms we are talking about? Cough, cold, a little bit of cough and fever and body aches. I mean, if I ask you how many times you've got those symptoms in your life, I mean, since you were born, you've had it so many times. Okay, I mean, you've had cough, cold, a fever for a day and two, and you are fine. So it's important. So you don't need such people coming to hospital and taking up hospital resources, especially at this moment. Okay, so such people can stay at home. But then while they're staying at home, but the important things to monitor is whether they are having any pneumonia-like symptoms. Okay, so some people have diarrhea and stuff also, but so especially younger people might not know that they might be feeling bad until late. Okay, so we have had instances, people in their 30s and even 40s who are fit, yeah, relatively young. Okay, I mean, I know you would not call people in their 40s young, but okay, let's talk about 30s. So people in their 30s who had not taken the vaccine because they work out, they are very fit, okay, and they're very healthy, have no comorbidities, and but still people get pneumonia. Okay, sometimes you can. It is obviously more common in elderly people and obviously more common in people with diabetes, heart disease, and hypertension. But sometimes, yeah, younger people can get it. But because they have a good working lungs, they might not feel it until, so the early signs could be when they're walking about, if they're feeling a little bit breathless, like if you're climbing the stairs, you feel a little bit breathless. When you get up and go into the toilet, which is, of course, like a very minor thing, if that causes any breathlessness, you have to be alerted. And if you get a really bad cough, okay, again, you wouldn't want to take chances, because we know that it's old people who die, but it's always very important to be cautious.
Even in the previous questions, you discussed a little bit about the resources and the healthcare sector. What can the general public do to aid the healthcare sector? Because we know the healthcare sector is taking their toll. So what can the general public do?
Yeah, so the general public, I think, of course, now we have a lockdown, but I don't know when the lockdown will be lifted. I know they're saying it's 30th, but I really doubt it. But I would say even the general public, when this is the most difficult times, I think anybody would have gone through. I mean, if you take the history of the world, in 1918 and 1919, all of you would have heard that there was a flu pandemic, influenza pandemic, called the Spanish flu, which killed around 50 million people. Okay, 50 million people is a lot of people. So the Spanish flu killed more people than both world wars combined. Okay, so that's how many people died within 2 years. And before that, we had the plague, the Black Death, all those things in the 1970s and so on. Of course, times are different now. We have better healthcare systems, so 50 million people are not going to die. Okay, but more than enough people have already died, although it's not 50 million, right? So for instance, in India, during those terrible times, during the 2 months, although they had declared 400 something deaths, now the estimates are coming out. It was probably actually between 3 to 4 million deaths. Okay, so 10 times more. Okay, so even general public, when you hear the so many horror stories coming out from the hospitals, and daily death rates increasing, I think it's important to actively engage in something positive. Okay, so I mean, everybody's stuck at home. Okay, so I know either you're going to university, working, or doing something, because all of you are young people. So but think if you think, okay, you can't do any of those things, go out and spend time with your friends, do this and that, but if you can think, okay, this is the, I mean, you can't change that, right? But you have got right now, I mean, you are under lockdown, you can't go out, and then given that that will be the fate till about end of September. Okay, that will be your fate, at least till end of September. How can you productively use your time as young people? Okay, so what are the things that you wanted to do that you didn't have time to do? Okay, now you have got all the time in the world, and mind you, after this time you will not have that time. Okay, you will be very busy people. So think about all the things that you wanted to do in life. It could be writing a book. It might be learning something. There are so many online resources right now that you can do. So I think don't waste a minute of your time. Do something productive.
That's a good answer, I think, madam. And I want to circle back to vaccinations, madam, and to discuss a little bit about how, because lots of people talk about the side effects of vaccinations, and they think, why the risk? We don't know what we're putting inside our body. So can you clear some doubts regarding these issues?
Yes. So I think so we do know what we are putting inside our body. Okay. So first of all, So first of all, these vaccine constructs were not specifically made for COVID. If you look at the Pfizer, the mRNA vaccines, I mean, there's a lot of myths about the mRNA vaccines and these vector vaccines, AstraZeneca vaccines, that you're putting things inside your body. So, but these have been undergoing clinical trials for like 6-7 years, okay, for cancer patients, okay. So cancer patients have a very weak immune system, okay. So, and these were experimented as cancer vaccines, these platforms, and they were all already tried out in cancer patients. And because they were safe in cancer patients, you know, the cancer patients who have a very weak immune system and compromised state, because they were experimented over like 6 years or even more, certain vaccine platforms even more, they could be rapidly modified. So the beauty of these new technologies can be rapidly modified to develop vaccines in new pathogens. And so this is how, and of course, they went through the proper clinical trials. So how that happened was because all the red tape was cut. When you do research, it's red tape that actually takes most of your time and not the research itself. And then everybody pumped in money, okay, because it was everybody's problem and not a, you know, like a developing world problem or something like that. So everybody pumped in money. There was more than enough money available. So that's how it progressed. And so far, we know that I think more than 1 billion vaccine doses have been administered. Okay, so that's a lot of vaccines. Okay, and nothing has happened. all these. So there's a large anti-vaxxer campaign also. You know, like the flat earthers. Do you know about the flat earthers?
Yeah, the conspiracy. Yeah.
Okay, I mean the flat earthers. Those are the for people who might not know who flat earthers are. Those are the people who believe the earth is flat. Okay, and it is not, and it's flat, and you actually find the end of the earth because it's just flat. And they do come up with ample scientific evidence to show that the earth is flat. Okay, so that's how much myths can take forward. So the biggest myths are, when it comes to the younger generation, why people are not taking it, is fertility, because there are enough and more people who just got married or want to get married and have kids, and they don't want to, or causing impotence. Okay, you don't want to be impotent and that sort of thing. So these are really big myths, because so many people, I said over 1 billion people have got these vaccines, and it has not affected any of those functions, and it is impossible to affect those functions because the vaccines have no, that's not how the vaccines work. They don't have anything to do with reproductive functions.
Thank you, madam. Now let's just imagine a little bit that the pandemic has come to a close, however long that might take. And what do you think, in your opinion, should be the first step that the global community should take in order to be better prepared for the next pandemic?
Yes, so let's talk. I think everybody wants to also know when this will come to an end. Okay, yes. So, yes, because that's a good big question. Like because if we look back at 2020 September, okay, everybody was thinking, okay, 2021 September. I mean, we would be putting everything behind us. 2020 is the bad year. I mean, and putting all these memes and jokes that, you know, 2020 dawning of 2020, that was bad, and let's pretend that 2020 didn't exist, but 2021 turned out to be worse. Yes. Okay, I mean, and we are into sort of end of August 2021, and we know that September 2021 is not going to be good, not just for Sri Lanka, because Delta has taken over the world, and we are seeing very bleak picture everywhere in the world. Okay, so when we see a bleak, I mean, is this our fate forever? But as I just told you a few minutes ago, in the UK, they're having more cases of COVID than they had last November to January. There are so many died. Okay, but they have cases, but no deaths. Okay, yes. And that's what we're aiming at. So there is no way that we can get rid of COVID. It will not go away. So if you go hundreds of years back, 1980s, 1990s, the Spanish flu that wiped out about 50 million of people is still around. Have you got infected? Yes. Probably you would have. Okay. Have I got infected? Yes. Okay. Probably yes. It stayed around, but with vaccines and stuff, I mean, we are okay. Yeah. But flu does kill, mind you. Every year, at least, the flu does kill about hundreds and hundreds of, not hundreds, 100,000 of people, about 250,000 to 500,000 people, or sometimes 1 million people in some years die every year of flu. Okay, so flu did not stop killing people after 1990, 1990. It does still kill people. Okay, it does. So COVID will go up to that point. It will kill people. Okay, but people don't care that much about flu because it doesn't kill a lot of people. Okay, so it will kill a tiny amount of people. So malaria kills a lot of people. TB kills a lot of people. There are HIV kills a lot of people. So there are a lot of infections that kill a lot of people. Okay, but so COVID will come out, come up to that level, and and I hope it will be by at least by the end of this year. I mean, we might be able to go Sri Lanka. We might be able to go back, go to normal life, hopefully in October, with the speed of vaccination happening. So because right now we don't have enough vaccination, adequate adults being fully vaccinated. So after adequate numbers of adults are fully vaccinated, then it's going to be fine. And will everybody, each one of you get COVID? Yes. Okay. So that is also, and how will it manifest in you? Maybe you won't even know. Maybe you'll get a little bit of a cold. Maybe you'll get a diarrhea. Maybe you'll get body aches, like you've had so many times in your life, because all of these are younger people. Okay. Now, but how do we prepare for the next pandemic? Will a next pandemic come along? Yes. Because why is that? Because of what we are doing to the world. We are cutting down trees. There is a thing called climate change. I don't know if you know that there's a thing called climate change. And when we cut down forests, now if you take an infection like Ebola, okay, and how did Ebola get around? Okay, that is because of too much human and animal interactions. So we go into the territories where humans never went into, and when we destroy the forest, we get more and more pathogens coming into and infecting people. Okay, so and that causes a lot of problems. Now earlier, this also happened. Like if you go back to 60,000 years or something, where we were in jungles and hunter-gatherers. Okay, so tribes were infected, and maybe those tribes were wiped out. But then those tribes but the infected tribe did not get on planes and go into different continents in the world. There were no such thing as air travel. So if you look at how COVID spread so fast, it's because of air travel. Okay, so there are going to be more pandemics and more and more spread. So I think the most important thing is, given that that viruses and these pathogens cause more devastation than any terrorist attack. I mean, I think you have to agree about that, right? I mean, when I just told you in 1918 and 1919, more people died of influenza than both world wars combined, and subsequently, even now, more people die of infectious diseases than people killed from terrorist attacks. You do have to invest money on science, yes, and to have surveillance systems. Now, all the countries spend a lot of money on defense to strengthen their intelligence, to detect terrorist activity early, on weapons, to eliminate, like the best weapons, nuclear weapons. I mean, such a lot of money. Okay, but when a virus comes, everybody's like, okay, now what do we do? Okay, because the intelligence to detect viruses very early, to act and do the proper things to eliminate viruses very quickly, those things are not there. So because none of the world authorities, maybe it can be US, from China to you name it, any country, even the richest countries have not invested enough on defense against these very important things. I mean, just no other terrorist organization would cause so much devastation to human life and the economy. Yes. I mean, if you look at countries like US, UK, how many big supermarket chains, big, like top companies just closed. Okay, so unless you invest on that part, that defense, then I think humans would see more and more pandemics coming, and we will face this situation more frequently.
That's very true, madam. And before we move on to the last question, I'd like to talk to the audience a little bit. All of you can put your questions inside the chat box. We will have a Q&A session after this. So you can ask Professor Nilika, Malvike, all of your questions and get them cleared out. And we'll move on to the last question, madam. So obviously we know that Sri Lanka is now currently facing the third wave, and its numbers are continuing to increase every day. People are definitely worried. And is the healthcare system as it is able to handle this increase, the surge in numbers that is happening right now, in your opinion?
Yes, so it's like this. Now, the largest number of cases are in the Western province. Okay, so, and we know that if we take Colombo has the largest number of hospitals, be it government, government hospitals. If you take Colombo, it has NHS, Kalubo, Ragama, Homagama, so many government hospitals in one place, and so many private hospitals, with the best healthcare facilities. So despite Colombo and also Gampaha having the largest number of hospitals, largest number of healthcare facilities, and the largest amount of doctors, okay, specialist doctors and all other nurses and other healthcare, you can see the numbers dying. And why is that? Because of this Delta issue. Okay, so we have Delta is, nearly all of the infections in the Western province are due to Delta. So Delta has just gone out, and so the rest of the provinces, the Central province, North Central, all these Uva province, all these provinces are lagging behind Colombo for about 4 to 5 weeks. Okay, so when the same spread happens in those provinces, okay, we know the health. Can you tell me the health resources in Monoragala, Badulla, Nuwara, Bolonna, compared to Colombo? Okay, so the situation, that situation is really scary. So if we really let it spread in other provinces, like what we are seeing in the Western province, you will see something very different than you're seeing now. What you're seeing now is bad enough, okay? But what will happen is unimaginable. Right now what we're seeing is unimaginable. If somebody told you maybe in June, okay, or let's say in May, when we had the Alpha wave and we got like 60, 70 people dying daily. I think the largest number actual number was like 60 or something. And that was utter devastation. So if somebody said, things are going to get worse, Delta is going to come and we are going to have 200, 300 deaths per day, which we are going there, by mind you, okay? I hope it doesn't get more than 300 deaths per day, okay? So, and nobody would actually believe it, that it could get worse, okay? But it did. So this is why I think, although a lockdown is causing a lot of issues and maybe too late for areas like Colombo, we don't know it. It might be too late for areas like Colombo. We should actually slow the transmission in other provinces. We can't let the other provinces come to the same level as we are seeing in Colombo. That would not be good.
Yeah. Thank you very much, madam. So let's move on to the Q&A session of today's Q&A part of today's session. We already have a couple of questions in. I do want to say all of you can unmute your microphones and ask your questions as well. But we'll move on to the chat box questions. The first question, madam, is there's a lot of concern about Sinopharm. Is it effective as the rest of the vaccines? Is Pfizer superior? Should they wait for Pfizer? What are your thoughts on it?
Yes, that's a very, very important question. I'm very glad you asked it. So when it comes to Sinopharm, we do not have any data on its efficacy for Delta. Okay, so I know from our university, we did a research and we found that there are so many people who develop antibodies and so on. So people developing antibodies and vaccine efficacy are completely two different things. Okay, to find out the efficacy of a vaccine against Delta, how much it prevents hospitalization, how much it prevents death, you need a clinical trial. Okay, but having said that, when you look at the Sinopharm data from Sri Lanka, a lot of people who are dying are those who have not been vaccinated, and people who have had 2 doses of Sinopharm. they're not that, I mean, there have been people with 2 doses of AstraZeneca or Sinopharm dying, but the proportion of people who are fully vaccinated who are dying are very, very less. Okay, so that is something important. And of course, now if you are waiting to travel overseas or somewhere, certain countries don't accept Sinopharm as a vaccination, acceptable vaccine to say that you're fully vaccinated. I'm sure all of you are aware, right? US doesn't mind whether you're vaccinated or not, they just take you in. But certain European countries, Canada, Australia, and New Zealand, those countries don't accept, if you've had 4 doses of Sinopharm, they don't accept that you've been fully vaccinated. Okay, and that is because there is no data. As I just told you, there is no data available of the efficacy of Sinopharm against Delta. Okay, so it is not an anti-China move that they are not accepting Sinopharm as being fully vaccinated because they want to see their data. Okay, so it is not an anti-Chinese sentiment or saying that Sinopharm is not effective or anything. You have to show data. Otherwise, I mean, nobody can sign off and saying things like that. Now, whether you should wait for a Pfizer. Now, it's like this. Now, the people who are dying are people who are over 30s. I mean, yesterday, I think there were 45 deaths in people between the ages of 30 to 50. Okay. And I think there were 2 or 3 deaths in people who are less than 30. Okay. So, and there are people in their 20s also who develop severe disease. And of course, if you are anyway going overseas like this year, then you can, of course, write to the Ministry of Health and get a Pfizer or AstraZeneca so that you want to go overseas. But if you are not going immediately, then you should get a vaccine. Okay, because you have to make it to the next year. Okay, to do whatever. I mean, you have to stay safe. So staying safe is important, and the way you can stay safe, save your life, is by getting a vaccine. So now is not the time to choose the vaccine. Okay, so now is the time to stay safe and stay alive and make it to the next year, so that when things get normal, you can get on doing whatever you want to do.
Thank you. There's another question. Does the virus affect people of different ages differently? If an infant is affected, how do we identify and treat them?
Yes, so definitely the virus affects individuals very differently. So for instance, I mean, I suppose I can't show a slide, but if I just show one slide, you will understand how different it affects. Okay, so I'm just wondering if I can show a slide. I mean, can I share?
I think, madam, you have been made.
I can just let me. If I can just, there is this slide, but I'm okay. I can just share the screen. Can I share screen? Yes, I can. Okay. Okay, just wanted everybody to see this. Okay, so this information was available last year. Okay, around. So CDC put out this figure last year. So here the comparison group is 18 to 29. Okay, so if we take this group as a comparison group, as you grow older, so I just want you to, this is risk of death. So somebody who is between the ages of 75 to 84, compared to this comparison group between the ages of 18 to 29, have 220 times higher risk of death. That's a very high risk, okay? And if somebody is over 85, compared to this comparison group, they have a 630 times higher risk of dying, okay? And of course, you can see, even if you're between the ages of 40 to 49, you have a 10 times higher risk than this comparison group. Now, if you compare to 5 to 17-year-olds, compared to this comparison group, the risk of death is 16 times lower. Okay, and the 0 to 4-year-olds, compared to this comparison group, the risk of death is 9 times lower. Okay, so yes, I hope that was clear what I meant. So because I thought rather than saying things, it would be better if you sort of saw that, because it just goes into your head exactly the risk of death. So this is why all countries, not Sri Lanka, but all other countries started vaccinating the old individuals first and went down age-wise, and so that you prevent the people from dying.
Yeah, I see, madam. We have another question. We have seen messages on social media about the plight of healthcare workers. Are they at risk of developing clinical depression or suicidal tendencies?
Yeah, I mean, they can develop some. I know some healthcare workers are having post-traumatic stress syndrome, you know, PTS. Okay, so and I'll tell you why. I mean, I don't know. It's like this. I mean, the feeling of helplessness, because I mean, as healthcare workers, people do die. I mean, people in hospital, when certain people come to hospital, they might be having a heart attack. It might be a really bad road traffic accident, and sometimes you try, but you can't do anything, and people die. Okay, so but maybe you see one death per day, and those are cases that you know, okay, you can't do anything, and what can you do? But when it becomes more frequent than that, okay, and when you see lots of people dying, and especially dying because they can't breathe, that is a horrifying sight. Okay, and we know that right now the ICUs are full. So just imagine this scenario. So this scenario unfortunately has happened over and over again, where somebody comes to the emergency treatment unit with very low oxygen levels, and obviously needs to get into ICU or actually high dependency unit, but there are no beds. Okay, so then you do what you do, and what you do is not enough, and you know that what you're doing is not enough. Okay, you're managing the patient in the ETU, and you know that that is not going to help the patient, and you just to try whatever you can, knowing that the patient is going to die, and of course the patient dies, and that happening also in an increased frequency. It's difficult to take that, isn't it? Like okay, you watch somebody die when you could have done something, and you couldn't do something because because what you do now, okay, there are no facilities to put the patient, right? So that is fairly traumatic.
That's a very good insight, madam. Something we don't really think about.
Yeah.
The fourth question, there's another question. Has enough been done or anything been done on the side of the policymakers to protect the mental health of the healthcare workers? So are there anything from that side that they have?
Not at all. I don't think people understand the health, the mental effect of the pandemic on healthcare workers. And I think if anybody is having such things, I think policymakers might be thinking it's silly, or you know, like just get along with it. What are you doing? You know, sort of thing. I think, I don't know. Okay, so but I think you know. It's not just something that happened in Sri Lanka. It's happened over and over in all countries. You could, I mean, if you just log into what happened in US, a lot of healthcare workers had PTS, and in all countries, healthcare workers were really, so it's not something that is affecting healthcare workers in Sri Lanka alone. Healthcare workers everywhere in the world went through this sort of thing. And healthcare workers also went through this sort of thing during the war. When there were bomb blasts and people just were brought in, I mean, or if there was mass casualties because of some battle in the north, where a lot of young men were coming with, you know, like indescribable wounds. Yeah, so yeah.
Thank you, madam. There's another question. Is there a role for medical students to play in the front lines to make things easier for the healthcare workers?
Yes, I think there is. And I think there were, all the universities were asking for volunteers, people who have a little bit of knowledge. Okay, not, I wouldn't say first year students or second year students, somebody who has had a little bit of exposure and know how to talk to a person, okay, a patient. So because a lot of patients have different worries about, especially because we are having this home care system, to answer questions, to relieve anxiety, and just to sometimes just talk, you see, because just talking to patients make them, it's just that it's not that people are feeling, you know, ill or anything. They're just so anxious and feel helpless. So sometimes just talking to them and listening, not doing anything, listening is a really important part of curative medicine, okay, which doctors don't understand. You don't, most of the time, for the patients to make them better, not just mentally, but when they mentally feel better, they physically also improve. I mean, there are lots and lots of research about it. Okay, when you mentally are okay, you physically improve very well. So just listening is important.
Thank you, madam, for that. There's another question. Foreign travel is not allowed for particular vaccines like AstraZeneca, like Australia doesn't allow citizens vaccinated with AstraZeneca. Is it politics or is there a difference actually?
No, Australia does allow people with AstraZeneca to come in. Okay. Mm-hmm. Yeah, so it does. So it's like this. I think the issue was the Indian version of the AstraZeneca or Covishield, which was Europe and Australia. And that was nothing to do with politics. It's like this. You have to apply for registration to get approval. Okay. People don't just approve things without, now if you have to make application first, right? So the Serum Institute India had not done that. So this is why earlier the European Union and Australia didn't take that as a valid vaccine, because I mean because you have to have it approval, right? So yes, so without application you don't get approval. So now it is sorted.
Okay, thank you, madam. Epsilon is a recent variant that was said to be resistant to vaccines. Should we be concerned?
No, and I'll tell you why. So people were concerned about Lambda. Okay, I mean, if you remember the whole hype about Lambda in the news, that we've got this huge Lambda thing, but now after Delta hit those countries where because it was in Latin American countries that Lambda was found, but now Delta has gone into those countries and Lambda has disappeared. And I'll tell you why. Because it's about the survival of the fittest, isn't it? So something has to be much better than Delta, or in other words, more transmissible than Delta to replace Delta. Okay. So right now, so far, fortunately, we haven't got something better than Delta. Delta is the best. Okay. So now we have the UK variant all this time, and we don't see it anymore. It has been wiped out by Delta.
Okay.
It's a survival of the fittest and evolution taking place in real life in front of you.
Okay, thank you. There's another question. Can we have doses of different vaccines? Vaccine mixing. Is there a loss of effectiveness?
No. So it depends on what vaccines are mixed. So there is ample evidence of mixing and matching the mRNA vaccines, which is Moderna and Pfizer with AstraZeneca. And there are no efficacy studies, but there are immunogenicity. Immunogenicity studies are the ones that look at the antibody response. So people, when you mix and match Pfizer, AstraZeneca and Moderna, you get a better antibody response. Whether that translates to better efficacy, we don't know. Okay, but definitely people do get a good immune response.
Okay. Another question, is it possible to find a cure for COVID so that no one will get infected by it ever again?
That's a I mean, people haven't finding cures for viruses that don't make people get infected is difficult. The only way that people that's so far, I mean, because now people don't get infected from measles, people don't get infected from polio. Smallpox is of course wiped out, but polio, measles, and all these viruses, we don't get infected because we have been vaccinated. Okay. So you can't give treatment to prevent getting infected. It's your immune response, your beautiful immune system that actually stops you getting infected from all these nasty infections. And that's how vaccines work. Okay. But some vaccines completely get rid of stop infection, like the measles vaccine, the polio. There are some vaccines or infections like influenza, you can get infected. But even if you get infected, I mean, you're miserable, of course, but that's it.
There are 3 new variants of Delta, and they say it is Sri Lankan in origin. How do we know a particular variant is from a specific country?
Yes, so that is a completely, I think the news that has gone out is completely wrong. Okay, so that question itself. Okay, so we have the Delta variant. Okay, and that is a RNA virus. I mean, okay, it's a virus. Okay, so when viruses transmit, I mean, when they replicate, certain errors occur during replication, mutations. You call them mutations. So most of these mutations are not good for the virus, so those viruses are eliminated, and certain mutations are just remaining, and most of these mutations are not significant. Okay, so there are actually 4 mutations in the Delta variant that we find in Sri Lanka. We have found 4 mutations. So now, because it's a global pandemic, when you sequence the viruses, like all our sequencing data, we upload it to a global platform. Okay, so all the countries are doing that. Okay, everybody is uploading their data. So every virus we sequence, we upload the data. So then we can, mix and match, not mix and match, pattern, then we say, okay, how similar are or different are our deltas to the reference delta, or to the delta seen in America, delta seen in Singapore, deltas seen in the whole world. So you can just run our deltas through this massive data platform and find out, okay, when you compare our delta to all other deltas in the whole world, what are the differences in our delta? So of these 4 mutations, these are not 4 variants. It is the Delta variant, which happens to have those 4 mutations. One is seen in several countries. One of the mutations is also seen in Malaysia. Two mutations are unique to Sri Lanka. But if you do the same for other countries, if you look at the Delta variants in Malaysia and then compare them to so many other variants in Deltas in other countries, again, you will find mutations that are unique to Malaysia. If you take Bangladesh Deltas and then compare them to everywhere else, you will find mutations that are specific for Bangladesh. So these are actually nothing to be concerned of. Okay, I mean, you get mutations in the virus all the time, and some of them are unique to our country, like they might be unique to some other country. So, so these mutations are nothing to be concerned, because I can confidently say that they don't affect vaccine efficacy. However, we are just investigating whether they can affect the transmissibility of the virus. In other words, whether the deltas which have these mutations can transmit faster. Does it have a does it give an advantage to the virus to make it more transmissible? Okay, so and how we do that is we compare the Delta variants with these mutations compared to other variants. Like, okay, during the last week of July, how many of Deltas were of this mutation compared to others? Then second week of August, how many is that versus this? Next week. So if that particular Delta with those mutations is more transmissible, then you see that coming up. So for instance, we know that Delta is more transmissible than Alpha. When Delta came, Alpha went. I mean, you can't find Alpha anymore. Okay, so it completely displaced it. It takes time to find those things out. But right now, I don't think you should be concerned.
Okay. Okay, so can anyone predict when this will end? Is there even a projected date? I think you talked a little bit about this, about how Sri Lanka...
So it won't end. It will never end. Okay, but vaccines will make it like a common cold. Okay, and I know all of you don't like a common cold, but we get it. And some common colds are okay. Some common colds are like really nasty. Okay, that you want to lie in bed. So it will be like that. And sometimes, you know, your family will get a common cold. You might not get it. Okay, and of course, like influenza, I just said that about 200,000 to 300,000 people die of influenza every year. Okay, so COVID will kill some people every year. Okay, and that it will kill some people every year, and it will be like influenza. It will be the older people and so on. And if you take the influenza vaccine in cold climates, every winter, just before every winter, all the people and people with certain comorbidities are given a flu shot. So in future, in all countries, the older people might have to be given a COVID shot. Okay, but not everybody.
That makes sense. Where can we obtain information about vaccinations and guidelines? For example, a pregnant mother, how long should she wait before getting the doses?
Oh no, pregnant mothers should get the doses immediately, okay? Because pregnancy makes you very vulnerable to develop severe COVID. Okay, so if anybody is pregnant, go and get the vaccine tomorrow, because I mean, it's unfortunate that pregnant mothers get severe disease, but they do, and it's not something just related to COVID. For influenza, also pregnant mothers get very severe influenza. Pregnant mother, if they get chickenpox, they get the mortality is like, I mean, chickenpox mortality is very high if you get chickenpox in pregnancy, and it's the same with dengue. Okay, in 2017, when we had a very large dengue epidemic, the number one cause of maternal mortality in 2017 was dengue. Okay, so pregnant women don't do very well with infection. Go and get your vaccine tomorrow.
Okay. The next one is what is the best immunity vaccine so far? I think they want to ask which one is has the highest efficacy. I think.
So it's difficult to say from the UK data, because we don't have our own data. You see, I mean, hopefully we will have it. But in the UK data, they have shown that Pfizer, AstraZeneca, and Moderna, actually they have used mainly AstraZeneca and Pfizer, they have an over 90% efficacy in preventing hospitalization with Delta.
Mm-hmm.
We don't have data from Sinopharm, which is the vaccine that is mostly used in Sri Lanka. But our hospitalization criteria are very different. In the UK, only people with severe disease get into hospital.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, and that was their policy from the beginning of the epidemic. You only get into hospital if you have severe disease. Whereas in Sri Lanka, people go into hospital and so-called intermediate care centers for various reasons. So this is why we can't get data for Sri Lanka, because we don't have certain criteria that if you only have this, you can go into hospital.
Okay, madam. Another question, is Pfizer available for students going abroad?
Yes, there is a portal in the Ministry of Health that you can get yourself registered and get a Pfizer.
Okay. There was a longer length than recommended in administering AstraZeneca.
Yes, so the AstraZeneca recommendation was from 8 to 12 weeks, but it of course took, I think, 16 to 20 weeks in most people to administer it. But later a paper, which was not ideal, of course, and because with one single dose, you're not protected. Okay, but even if you take the AstraZeneca dose later, it still induced the similar amount of protection after you get the second dose. So that is the important thing. Yeah, and that was published by University of Oxford.
Okay. If a patient not showing any symptoms but identified as a COVID-19 positive patient, how should we work with him as his or her family member? So I think within a family, if someone is considered to be COVID-19 positive, how should we handle within the houses? I think.
Yeah, so it's like this. Because if somebody is positive, the person starts shedding the virus 48 hours before the person shows any symptoms. Okay, so before your family member starts showing symptoms, the person has been shedding virus for 48 hours before. So with Delta, we are yet to see a family who has not, if one member was infected, the other members not been infected.
Okay, right.
Okay, but if you are living in separate floors and you haven't been meeting each other, okay, because like some families, on the top, I mean, they have several floors. One family, extended families, one family might be living on the top floor, then the grandparents in the other floor, and if they haven't been any mixing, and you find somebody is positive, please remain no mixing. But if there has been mixing, it is highly unlikely. I mean, you're infected basically.
Okay. Okay. Is there anything we as the youth can do to help the healthcare workers?
Yes. Okay. That is an important question. So I think a lot of hospitals have put out lists of things that they want. So if there is any way that people can provide such things, then that would be that would be good. If there are any way of, I mean, those not expensive items, okay, it's just that minor items. So that is one thing. The other thing that can be done is, of course, because I think people need a lot of support right now, and if you just show that you're with them, and you understand what they are going through. So at least then, the mental strain can be a little bit lower. But then you say, we understand what you're going through. We are with you, or something like that.
Okay, the mental aspect.
Yeah, mental aspect, which is very, very much ignored.
Yes, I have to agree. So that was the last question, madam. In the absence of further questions, let's wind up today's session of Sanva. Thank you very much, Professor Neelika Malavike, for being with us here today, despite your busy schedule. We are all very grateful for all of the knowledge and advice you shared with us here today. And a very big thank you goes to all of you who tuned in and actively asked questions as well. So until we meet again, stay safe and have a nice evening.